Okay. Got the right mics on. Please be seated. Okay, let us go over to the other side. When we hear this proclaimed in today's gospel, what is the thought that comes to you in your mind? Why do you think Jesus is asking his followers to take him to the other side of the lake? Does he really just want to cross the lake, or is there some other meaning to his request? On the surface, this gospel looks like a story of Jesus taking command of the weather and saving his friends and several other boats from being swamped by the wind and the waves on Lake Galilee. But for us today, we're not on a lake. And we do not have the wind and waves raging around us. Or do we? What was really going on shortly after 70 AD when Mark wrote this gospel? First, the Romans were in charge in Jerusalem and Palestine. They had installed a puppet high priest over the Jews. But the Jewish people were oppressed and restless and causing a threat to the political stability of Pax Romana. They were speaking out against the Romans, angry about the tyrannical rule. In 70 AD, the restlessness boiled over on a full-on rebellion, and the Roman army moved in. This was not the first revolt, but Caesar determined it would be the last. Knowing that the temple was the center of the Jewish faith, the soldiers destroyed it. Can you imagine how devastating it was for the Jews who believed it was the home of Yahweh and the symbol of God's power on earth? It was like having the whole center of their belief system yanked out from under them. It created a vacuum of religious power, since the Jewish faith could no longer be centered upon animal sacrifices and the rituals performed in the temple. So in comes Mark, writing to them in this tumultuous time, saying that Jesus wanted to go to the other side. He was asking them to take another look at where the power of God resided, since it could no longer be in the temple. Mark showed them that there was hope for the future on the other side. In the boat, the wind and the waves were like the Roman rule, tyrannical Roman rule, the last straw being the destruction of the temple. It was always possible when crossing the lake that a storm could threaten the safety of a vessel, but the faith of the Jews was based on the least 1,000 years of history and writings, and the Romans had destroyed the very center of their faith. There had to be another way of seeing how God was present in their lives. Jesus' followers believed his teachings were leading them to answer their frustrations. But in today's gospel, this hope was asleep in the backs of the boat. With a tone of frustration, along with the panic in their voices, when they awakened Jesus with the accusatory words, "Teacher, do you not care that we perish?" Jesus answered their call and simply said to the turbulence, "Peace, be still." And immediately the wind ceased and there was a dead calm. Could it be that the divine love for them could be an answer to the turbulent times they were in? The story was meant to give them hope that this was true. In our day and time, we live in a much bigger world. We are affected not only by the things going on in our daily lives, but also those events and situations we hear and read about in the day's news. Last week, we heard about President Putin meeting with the supreme leader of North Korea, Kim Jong-un, and they entered into a mutual defense pact. Then Putin went to Vietnam to further show his animosity to the U.S. and the West. This is to me like the rough waters in the Sea of Galilee that threatened the disciples in today's gospel. In other parts of the world, we see disturbing trends that resemble the same troubling waters. We also see these troubling waters raging in our country. Hardly a day goes by we don't hear of a shooting in one of our cities. For example, last Friday, 3 people, now 4, were killed and 10 others injured in a grocery store in Fort Ark, Arkansas. This is not to mention the disturbing political situation in our country. The U.S. Constitution was established in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, and promote the general welfare and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. I'm not sure either political party is taking these words seriously to heart. It seems they have lost the goal to form the more perfect union sought after by our forefathers. So what hope do we have as we struggle to keep our lives afloat through these turbulent waters? Just as the people of Jerusalem shortly after 70 AD had, we also have the promise of Jesus to still the waters and rebuke the wind. We have his promise to be with us always that he gave in Matthew 28. And remember, I am always with you, even to the end of the age. We are like the disciples in the boat, because given the events around us, we need to call on Jesus to quell those turbulent times by awakening in the stern of the boat and say, peace, be still. The hope that this knowledge brings us is the basis of our faith. No matter what is going on in the world around us or in our personal situations, we can call on Jesus to quiet the storm. We don't always know how he will answer or how long the waters will rage until we feel the peace. But the peace will always come in one way or another. Our job is to hold on to the promise that no matter what, he is always with us. If we have to endure some turbulent waters before the peace, Jesus is there to hold our hands until the storm resides. I know it's hard to hold on when the waters are just raging. But we need to believe in the power of the hope we believe when we find the love of Jesus. We get this strength through living our faith through prayer, study, and the weekly celebrations of his life, suffering, and death for us. So I invite you to go across to the other side with our friend, Jesus.